everyone, and welcome back to AP Psychology. I am Mrs. Seguin. We are on Unit 1.2 today, which is the psychological perspectives on behavior. The lesson objectives today, we're going to discuss different perspectives in explaining behavior, because ultimately that is the point of psychology, is to explain human behavior. We're going to discuss the strengths and weaknesses of the theories in explaining behavior. We're going to do most of this in class tomorrow, but we will hit a little bit of it today. And then we're going to discuss the different domains of psychology, so the different sections within psychology as a subject. All right, for that first lesson objective, we are looking at different approaches in explaining behavior. Now, there are a lot of these. As a quick list, we're going to go over structuralism, functionalism, early behaviorism, Gestalt technique, psychoanalytic or psychodynamic theory, humanistic, evolutionary, biological, cognitive, biopsychosocial, and sociocultural. Do not get overwhelmed. I know it seems like a lot, but I will make it make sense. All right, structuralism versus functionalism. When you're looking at structuralism, you're going to look at the contents of the mental processes rather than their function. So you're not looking at what do the mental processes do, you're looking at what are they made of. With functionalism, you're focused on the function of the mental processes. You're focused on the function of that behavior. It is focused on how mental activities helped an organism fit into its environment. In other words, structuralism is looking at it, deciphering it. Functionalism is looking at why it exists, why we do it. Does that make sense? It is based in evolutionary psychology. There is a nice little chart that discusses structuralism versus functionalism. You are welcome to use that as a quick study skills note-taking device. Then we get to behaviorism versus Gestalt. So behaviorism believed that every action or behavior has a cause and a consequence. So basically it's very scientific. The antecedent, or the stimulus, produces the behavior produces what we call the consequent. So the cause and the effect, and the cause and the effect. It's very scientific in its approach. Gestalt believed that the observer contributed to what was under observation, that there was no completely freestanding reality there to measure in the first place, because our behavior and our brains change what we do when people are watching. And so when we know we're being observed, are we truly being observed, if that makes any sense? Okay, the psychodynamic versus the humanistic perspective. So in the psychodynamic perspective, the unconscious, irrational, and instinctive forces are determining human thought and behavior. In the humanistic perspective, it's pretty much the polar opposite. This was actually developed as a rebellion to behaviorism and the psychodynamic perspective, which they considered dehumanizing, frankly. They said, well, you're taking the free will away from humans. Humanism emphasizes looking at the whole person and the uniqueness of each individual. It begins with the existential assumptions that people have free will and they are motivated to achieve their potential and self-actualize. We're going to look later at this wonderful thing we call Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which basically builds upon the levels of what each human needs to get to self-actualization or ultimate fulfillment. Then we're going to look at the evolutionary and biological approaches. So the evolutionary approach says that psychological functions developed over time as survival strategies. This is based on the idea of survival of the fittest. And then the biological approach focuses on the biology of behavior. It focuses on the nervous system, the hormones, the genetics, like the actual brain organ. It believes behavior to be a consequence of our genetics and our physiology, or our bodies. Then we have the cognitive approach. Again, this is a very scientific study of the mind as an information processor. So think of the mind as a human computer. They look at the mental processes of an organism and how they influence behavior. So we're going to look deeper into the information processing model. So basically, the information processing model says that the information made available from the environment is processed by a series of processing systems, which we call attention, perception, and short-term memory. These processing systems transform or alter the information in systematic ways that our brain can understand it. The aim of the research is to specify the processes and structures that underlie cognitive performance. Information processing in humans resembles that in computers. Now, this is just a really good way to understand the human brain. It doesn't necessarily mean that they have completely dehumanized the human. Then we get to biopsychosocial and sociocultural. Biopsychosocial, the best way I know how to describe it is basically they couldn't pick one, which is very similar to what I was talking about in the last video, where you need more than one approach to fully explain behavior. So the biopsychosocial model views health and illness behaviors as products of biological characteristics such as genes, behavioral factors such as lifestyle, stress, and health beliefs, and social conditions such as cultural influences, family relationships, and social support. The sociocultural perspective focused on the social factors involved in learning. It looks at the important contributions that society makes to individual development. This theory stresses the interaction between developing people and the culture in which they live. So there is no human development outside of the culture. So it's essentially that no man is an island. They develop as humans within the culture that they live in. Sociocultural theory also suggests that human learning is largely a social process. So we learn from each other, we learn with each other. Learning is a very social with each other process. All right, I want you to pause here for just a few minutes, stop and fill in the notes. Make sure you can summarize the key points of each approach. I know it's a lot, but try. The next learning objective, we're going to discuss the strengths and weaknesses of the theories explaining behavior. Now, this one we're not going to cover in the video so much. We're really going to focus on it in class tomorrow. So we're going to look at what is the purpose of each theory explaining behavior, what does it say, and then where could it be stronger, and where is it pretty strong already. All right, real quick though, I want you to pause again, go through each approach again, and I want you to write down from your own brain one strength and one weakness of the approach. So I want you to look at the approach and I want you to just kind of process it for a minute and go, it might be missing this take, or, it's really good at this thing. I want you to write down one strength, one weakness of each approach. We will discuss these in class tomorrow, so make sure you bring your notes with you. All right, the third learning objective, we're going to discuss the different domains of psychology. So basically all of the different parts that make up the field of psychology, which is a very broad field. We have this nice little graphic organizer here of the 5 pillars of psychology. So we have the biological, the cognitive, the developmental, which involves human learning. Okay, we have the biological subfield of psychology. So basically how this works, if you look back at your 5 pillars picture, we have the 5 pillars of psychology. We have psychology as a field, basically, okay? Subfields beneath that, the biological, cognitive, developmental, social personality, mental, and physical health. Everything beneath that is a subfield of the subfield. Okay, so the biological subfield, we're exploring how biology influences behavior. Subfields within this, we can look at sensory and motor systems. We can study sleep, drug use and abuse, ingestive behavior, reproductive behavior, neurodevelopment, so the development of the nervous system, plasticity of the nervous system, so its ability to expand to include new information, and then biological correlates of psychological disorders, like what is going on physically that is causing the psychological disorder. Okay, in the cognitive subfield, we're focused on studying cognitions or thoughts and their relationships to our experiences and our actions. So how have our thoughts impacted our experiences and our actions? The subfields within this, we're looking at attention, we're looking at problem-solving techniques, we're looking at language development, and we're looking at memory. The clinical or counseling side is going to fall more in that abnormal psychology side over here. Basically, we focus on the diagnosis and treatment of psychological disorders and other problematic patterns of behavior. The focuses here are the study of abnormal psychology, counseling and treatment methods, and recommendations for coping with stress and living a healthy lifestyle. Within the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, which we will talk about in detail, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual is where all of the psychological disorders are basically cataloged and are approved by a board of psychologists. This manual includes a total of 237 specific diagnosable disorders, each described in detail, including symptoms, prevalence, risk factors, and comorbidity. Comorbidity is essentially if you have more than one at the same time. Within developmental psychology, we're looking at the scientific study of development across a lifespan. So the subfields here, we could deal with aging, could deal with cognitive skills, especially the difference in cognitive skills in young children versus aged adults, moral reasoning, social behavior, and other psychological attributes. Within industrial or organizational psychology, this applies psychological theories, principles, and research findings in industrial and organizational settings. This focuses on things like HR, personnel management, organizational structure, workplace environment. So just creating a healthy work environment for employees. And then we get experimental psychology. This is where it gets kind of fun. Experimental psychologists are interested in exploring theoretical questions, often by creating a hypothesis and then setting out to prove or disprove it. I use that with air quotes, and we'll talk about it later, through experimentation. They study a wide range of behavioral topics among humans and animals, including sensation, perception, attention, memory, cognition, and emotion. Then we get educational psychology. Teachers, woohoo! Educational psychology is a study of how humans learn and retain knowledge, primarily in educational settings like classrooms. This includes emotional learning, social learning, and cognitive learning processes. Areas of focus in this branch of psychology might include teaching and testing methods, classroom environment, learning, social and behavioral problems that may impede learning. So, quick stump the teacher, okay? See if you can find me tomorrow using psychology on you, educational psychology. I had to take a wide range of educational psychology classes in college, so see if you can find me using it on you. And then we get personality psychology. This is one that people love to study. This is the study of human personality. So the focuses are the construction of a coherent picture of the individual and their major psychological processes. So understanding who am I by my personality and who are you by your personality. It's an investigation of individual psychological differences. A lot of times we like to find our personalities and then compare the differences. And then we have an investigation of human nature and psychological similarities between individuals. One of the big personality things, and when we get to the personality unit, we will come back to this, is what we call the ocean model. Basically, it's the 5 major characteristics of personality. O being openness, C being conscientiousness, E being extroversion, A is agreeableness, and N is neuroticism, which we will get to that when we get there. All right, and then psychometrics. So this is the branch of psychology concerned with the quantification and measurement, quantification meaning numbers, and measurement of mental attributes, behavior, performance, and the like, as well as with the design, analysis, and improvement of the tests, questionnaires, and other instruments used in such measurement. Basically, psychometrics is the field in which you are designing the things by which we gather data. All right, social psychology. We're almost there, I promise, is the scientific study of how people's thoughts, feelings, and behaviors are influenced by the actual, imagined, or implied presence of others. Okay, so whether people are actually there, you're imagining people are there, or you kind of feel like they're there, but they're not. Subfields of this particular pillar are factors that lead to behavior, attitudes, child rearing practices, discrimination and prejudice, ethnic and racial identity, gender roles and norms, family and kinship structures, power dynamics, regional differences, religious beliefs and practices, and rituals and taboos. And then we have positive psychology. Positive psychology is a branch of psychology that's a little new agey. It's focused on the character strengths and behaviors that allow individuals to build a life of meaning and purpose, to move beyond surviving to flourishing, to be the best version of yourself. You've probably heard that phrase a lot. This is things like building a pleasant life, which we see, exemplified in Hollywood, or a good life. This is personal strengths and engagement. It's a meaningful life. Positive psychologists have explored a range of experiences and behaviors involved in different versions of positive living, including specific positive emotions, flow states, and a sense of meaning or purpose. So positive psychology is where you get a lot of that, it's okay, just be you, you go, all that really encouraging psychology that you see. It's really trendy right now. That's positive psychology. All right, I want you to pause here, fill in your notes, Make sure you understand the different fields and subfields within psychology. All right, in this lesson, we learned the different perspectives in explaining behavior. We are going to talk about the strengths and weaknesses tomorrow, and then we discuss the different domains of psychology. What's next? Tomorrow, you have activities. We're going to do psychological perspectives on behavior. We'll do a class discussion on the strengths and weaknesses. We'll do a psychological perspectives graphic organizer. So we're going to recreate the 5 pillars graphic organizer. And that will be the same thing as the domains graphic organizer. You will have no homework tomorrow night. Yay. The next day, however, you have topic quiz 1.2, so come prepared for that. All right, here is my daily meme, or I guess every other day. All right, that is it for today. I will see you in class tomorrow.